Well, we got a call out last night for this sycamore limb that has cracked and bent over, and it's now resting on the edge of the house. With the pole saw, I cleared all these lower pieces out here, and from this perspective, to me anyway, it's clear that this branch has been cut back many times, causing massive multitudes of sprouting branches that have turned into long, heavy branches. So I'm guessing, you can see where there's a old wound right there. So let me zoom in on it. Yeah, right there. So something was cut off there, and right above it there was another cut, and over here there's a massive of sprouts that have been cut off. So my guess is that because this tree or this branch has been cut back so many times and not maintained, that the additional weight on the limb exceeded the capability of that limb. Kind of hard to see here, but it's sort of twisted. It's still intact. So what we're doing now is Kalen's going to go way up high and be roped in so he's safe, because he's got to go out there. But we got to get this tied off before I can clear the roof. Because right now, if I make these next cuts, this is going to swing down, and we might get lucky, but in the same breath, that butt end could come down, slam into the house, break his citrus tree or his plants. You know, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it's a nice little citrus tree. So we got to make it safe before we make the cuts. Ready?
Yeah. I want to take some of that weight off if you can.
Yeah.
Heads up. Keep coming swinging. I think it's gonna break.
Cut these.
Yeah. Cut it. I don't think it's gonna break.
You have to cut it.
Yeah.
Try and get the rope so that it doesn't get caught up on anything sharp there. Good.
What?
Got it.
Oh, you got it.
There, we got the rope with a wrap up on the top, wraps over itself. Good job. Let me see if I can figure out how to get this down without breaking plants. Okay, here's the split. It was a big twist split, and it was still actually held on there. I counted the rings on this large limb, which is less than the age of the entire tree, but not that much age, and I counted 60 rings approximately. It's kind of tough to tell. So this tree is only about 60 years old. So he puts the house 1957, which tells me that the tree was planted when they built the house. So we've got all these different areas in the tree that I'm looking at that show where this particular limb has been cut back many, many times over its entire life. And consequently, every time you made a big cut, it created multitudes of branching. And here you've got this whole area of branching, so there's a buried cut in there. Sycamore is a wood that actually absorbs the wounds quite well, and you can barely tell that there was any cuts made in here. But look at this strange growth configuration. That's where it's been stubbed off. You can see where it was bigger, and there's a cut in the back over here. And there's an old wound right there, and there's a wound there and a wound there. So because of the location of the house, this branch has been repeatedly cut. Look at this one over here. This is lots of little pulponar cuts, but it created just a massive sprouts all over the place. So you can see lots of small wounds over and over and over again. So in 60 years, this tree that had that one offending branch that was too close to the house was constantly being cut back away from the house. So it resulted in masses of more foliage than the branch could hold. Add to that the large amount of rainfall we had this year and increase in foliage. So all of this foliage right here is off of this one branch. And we're still not done. We still got wood on the ground over here. Good job. So I cut open this spot where it's obviously been stubbed off many, many times in the past. And you can see some of the old wounds. That's where it was cut there. You can see the flatness. And this one was cut off flat right there. Now this is a species of tree that is recognized for absorbing its wounds. And I can't say that it is decay resistant, but it sure seems to be. Some trees like the silver maple and the birch, and there's a lot of other trees, oaks, you know, you make big cuts in them, and it's like as soon as you make the big cut, it's the beginning of the long-term process of decay and hollowing out and going into the system. But there's a lot of times that you'll get into a great big sycamore tree. Actually, let's call them platanus, because in England, when you say sycamore, you're talking about a maple. And this is clearly not a maple. This is more commonly called a plane tree in Europe. For some reason over here in the US we refer to these as sycamore, and that really confuses things. But you can see an old wound right here. I should cut this one in half as well. Okay, no special effects here. I physically cut it open, and you can see how little decay there is in this particular species of tree.
Outpaces the decay.
So this is a good example of what happens when you continually tip back a tree. In this case, because it was neglected for so long, the additional weight just got more than this limb could hold. But the branching here is not natural at all. This is an abnormality as a result of many years of cutting. So if I cut this one open, I think I'd find the same sort of thing on it. There's a lesson here. All right, there is a lesson here, and I've given you a few minutes to think about it. What do you think I'm going to say? This tree has been cut back many times, and you can see the evidence of the sprouting all over the place throughout the entire tree. And it's about, I'm going to guess this tree is probably about 65 years old. So through the entirety of its life, even when it was down low, this tree had people coming in and containing it, making end cuts. But it hasn't happened in a long time. So this tree has not been pruned in a long time. So I see areas where the branches will go a long ways out, and then there's this big mass of growth on the very tips. So it's sort of a combination of lion's tailing, but increased mass on the ends. So I guess the lesson is, had this tree never been touched and was allowed to grow natural, would that branch have split? Would the tree be weak? Would the tree require consistent maintenance to keep it safe, all caused by the initial pruning or shaping? Sometimes it's better to leave the trees alone. All right, I think it's also important to mention a mask. Whenever you work with sycamore trees, the dust that's on the underside of the leaves is very noxious. It clogs your lungs and makes you choke. It gets in your eyes, so a good quality mask is really critical.